Yeah, so I don't know why I sign up to these things. People convince me and then I turn up. Yeah, so I thought I'd have a bit of a chat about uh, developing sort of like good UI, and this is framed in the way of how I sort of like have approached what I do as a Maxis admin and the tools that I use and what I build and what I needed and what I was thinking about when I got there. I'm holding up lunch, so thank you very much. No. um, so yeah, I thought I'd do the movie thing and I put the credits at the beginning. First off, thank you, Patrick, for accepting me to come up and have a chat on the stage. This is absolutely amazing. It's my first Maxis admin. MSA crew, been awesome. The speakers that have already presented and all that sort of stuff, I love this stuff. It's been really, really great. Speakers to come. Can't wait to see what you've got to say. Justin Pitts, ADHA brother from another mother, loved it. Loved the talk, was really good. Yeah, and I love that we've got, so Andrina, Diana, and Andrew was up here before, and we're talking about, people. It's not just let's go into Bash and start doing Bash kind of stuff. So, loving the human elements, really, really good. Yeah, so hello. G'day, I am Australian. I promise not to swear too much. I've got two settings. I've got no swearing and I've got full bore. So we can do F-bombs, we can do C-bombs. No, we're not going to go there. There are many letter bombs that we can do. So yeah, I'm from a place in Australia called Canberra. It's a little country town in the middle of nowhere. It's built in a sheep paddock. Largest inland city in Australia. Also happens to be the capital. Also happens to be a very nice place to live. Unless you're from Canberra, unless you're from Sydney or Melbourne, they hate it. So don't turn up. It's horrible. They complain about it immensely. Throughout my slide, I'm going to have the backgrounds are going to be a bunch of photos. These are all photos that I've taken. Speaking of collecting hobbies, one of mine is photography. So I thought, it's kind of useless to do this with an Australian audience because they already know what the place looks like. So I thought for you guys I'd chuck up some stuff, and if you get bored with what I'm talking about, you can just have a look at the pictures. There's only one of those that isn't mine, and that's this one. So I work for the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, otherwise known as the CSIRO. Internally, we just call it CSIRO. And it is it's a research organisation. We collaborate a lot with universities, education. We do a lot of research for industry and all that sort of stuff. It's been really great because I get access to Eduroam and I don't have to worry about the portals or anything like that. So I just get straight on the Wi-Fi and it just works. It's really good. Part one. So I've spoken about swiftDialog before at XWorld, and last year I had a really great opportunity to talk about it at Mac DevOps as well. And I've spoken it in the capacity of here's a thing that I make and I want to show you what I made. I'm going to do that again today, a little bit later, so there'll be a bit of that. But what I would like to talk about is kind of like the how, right? Where the points that I was at with my sort of like admin workflow, and what sort of things made me decide to sort of move in. So we're starting at the beginning, and this is the beginning. This isn't just like, hey, I'm a Mac admin, I'm doing stuff. We're going all the way back. This is also the beginning that I care about. So this is going to be a representation of the type of things that I was sort of, dealing with and growing up with, sort of in my IT sort of career, I guess. And I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff. So there's going to be things missing. And all that sort of stuff. Obviously, we've got a limited time. I'm okay, it's still in the green, that's all good. So this isn't like a complete comprehensive history of like user interfaces or anything like that, it's just sort of like started from scratch. So in the beginning, this was my first computer, the Tandy TRS-80. It was coincidentally the first time I used a Microsoft product because that's what the basic version was running. So, and this thing, it had a big bright screen and a big blinking cursor, and that's what you're presented with. And somehow you had to go from there to doing whatever you did with it. Also played around with Commodore 64. So this was nice because it wasn't bright green, it was now blue. Much easier on the eyes. But similar kind of thing, like it boots into, like you turn it on with nothing else turned on, you're a kid and you just plug this thing in, what can I do with it? And you get this blinking cursor and you start typing things in, it tells you syntax error. And similar story, Apple II, we sort of like boot into, or if you're an Apple I user, we might boot into Wasmon, but we boot into, basically a basic interpreter or whatever it is. MS-DOS, again, it's a similar story, right? We're turning these computers on and they're presenting us with a thing and they're saying, what do I do next? All right? You have to give it something to do. You have to tell it what to do. And it's very specific about the type of language you need to use to do that. I do remember going from like TRS-80 to Commodore 64 and you'd get these magazines with the games in them, you type them in by hand. And to be like, how come it works on this computer and not that computer? And it's like, well, there's poke commands and there's different memory things and there's some basic works and some doesn't and all sorts of stuff. So our user interface for this device is a whole bunch of buttons. The hardware here is sort of like made to be, as cheap as possible because they want people to get it. The command line interface is functional. Right? You get stuff done, but it's explicit, right? You type in the wrong thing, it doesn't do the thing that you would think you want it to do. So you have to tell it to do things correctly. And this is even, we can load things in from tape or we can load things in from a cassette or whatever the case is, but we still have to tell it to go and load the thing, right? So we have to know how to do that. It's not very forgiving. Somehow, though, as kids, we all managed to do that, and we all loaded up our games on our C64s and waited 15 minutes for it to load from the tape and hear lots of beeping and buzzing and watch this screen for God knows how long before our game crashed. But this is a usable interface, right? The Commodore 64 by itself has sold millions, right? Lots of people use them, lots of people love them. Even to this day, people the retro community for these things is huge, right? So it's not a non-functional UI. It is a UI, right? It is our communication with the device itself. But the UI can get better, is getting better. So a couple of things start to happen. So one is, people are getting more familiar with the hardware. Right? The capabilities of what this thing can do. It's not just, we've given you this thing and here's a language and do the thing. They're like working out how to hack this thing and, let's, sneak into memory and do things like that. The hardware is getting more efficient. Computing power starts to increase. So we're replacing, 6502 CPUs, Z80s, with 68K, Intel 8088. 8086, for some reason, Intel makes the lower number the more powerful CPU. So that started very early for them. So we're in the 16-bit era. This increased headroom provides, with like CPU and extra RAM capacity, allows for much more superior user interface. Right? We're getting into graphical user interfaces. Way more superior, right? Okay, maybe not Windows 1. Oh, actually, maybe Windows 1, we'll never know. They did go to eventually work it out. That's very blurry, isn't it? Whatever. On the Commodore, on the C64, we get GEOS, or GEOS, some people call it. So this is running on the Commodore 64, later on C128 and the Apple II. We get the Amiga. The Amiga comes out, and we've got Amiga Workbench. This is a very sort of powerful way to interact with your devices. And of course, we've got the Mac. Graphical user interface first, right? So my first memories of using a classic Mac is opening it up and being confused because I wasn't presented with this black screen that I had to tell it what to do. It was already there saying, you show me what you want to do, right? So our user interface now is much more simplified, right? It's easier. And in that simplification, we get a lot more power, right? We're no longer tied to having to know exactly, what to type. It's much more fuzzy than that. Like, we can move the mouse around. It's not defined where it has to be on the screen. You can click a button, you don't have to click it exactly on the right pixel. So these things are evolving and improving. So it makes us ask the question, like, what makes a user interface good? All right? Is it that, we can now point and click and drag things around rather than type things in? Or is it something a little bit more nuanced, right? So Windows is better than DOS. Even Windows 1 is better than DOS. Our windowing systems on Commodore platforms, they're better than these command line things. Mac's better than everything. I might be biased. So again, we ask this question, what is making the user interface better? The GUI is something which makes it better in a meaningful way, right? This improves what came before it. Like I said before, like those command lines, they're not bad, right? They were what they were at the time. They were what's available. We improve it, we make it better, right? And we're improving the interface between the human and the computer. I was supposed to say that during that slide, but you can reread it. So the look and feel of these user interfaces can change quite dramatically over the years, right? So if you have a look at the original Mac and you have a look at what it is today, like we're looking at 40 years worth of innovation and stuff like that, but really these are the same things. We're sort of still pointing and clicking and dragging things around. Was the Mac better than Windows? Arguably, a lot of people have some really strong opinions about that. And the question comes up, well, why did if Mac's better than Windows, like if it's easier to use, it hides away all these complexity things and stuff like that, how come the Mac market was smaller much compared to Windows? And really, the only reason for that, I think, is that Windows just needed to be better than DOS, which it was, right? And so, people are using something which is, bless you, people are using things which are, they're an improvement over what they're using before that makes them happy, right? And if they're happy, they'll buy the thing, even if there's a better option out there. So, moving on from that. So this is basically the base history. This is my sort of youth of computers before I was in school, didn't have a job, all that sort of stuff. These are the devices that I'm using.
A few years later.
Ooh, the audio did play. A few years later. This is before swiftDialog though, so I am working and setting up macOS devices in the CSIRO for about 15 years at this point. It's been my official job there for about 10. So obviously I was like many people. This is something that I organically came into. It's not something I was seeking out specifically. Insert Mac origin story here. And so I'm looking at my Mac management experience, right? I'm looking at how do I do things on these devices, what do I need to do, and what do I need to get the user to do, and stuff like that. So we've got things like, we put config files on the system, and these things might, change settings or change behavior, right? They might lock someone out from doing something. We've got random scripts running, doing God knows what. Bash is on the system. We can do many things with that. We need to update default user settings, right? So they might have maybe a Mac user at home and they come into work and we give them a Mac and they're like, how come I can't do this? These defaults have been changed. We have application installs, right? How do we manage that? We can install something using installer on the command line and it will just run it under the user doesn't see anything and then the app just appears. Maybe we want to do that, maybe we don't want to do that. And we've got things like device security. We've got minimum requirements we need to have people deal with. We have, security concerns, we have, restrictions that we need to have in place, all right? And so I'm looking at all this sort of stuff and I'm sort of thinking, what are my goals with these things? As an admin, I want to automate as much as I can, right? I want these things to sort of sit and do their things and react to what happens when the user's doing something. That's not always possible. Sometimes I need the user to actually interact with what I'm trying to do. Maybe I can't complete a particular automation unless I get some information first from the user. And I need to be able to provide some information to them, capture their response, so I can my automation can make a decision. So I've got these background processes, they take time to complete. And maybe I don't want the user to do anything during that. Some events don't take place until after the user logs in. Maybe I've got to wait for them to do something. So I'm sort of thinking about, what kind of things have we got available for that. Automation workflows generally live, we have scripts. We've got, whether it's, a shell script or a Python script or something else, or some tool that does something. Generally, the user doesn't live in that space, though, present company excluded. So I'm out looking for things that sort of help me make my interaction, right? The interface between myself and the user, right? I'm looking at that and saying, how can I make this better? And there are a bunch of tools out there which help me do this. Obviously, a lot of people use Monkey. Managed Software Center is absolutely fantastic for getting those app installs on. We can have them trigger something. It's an interactive process. They click the thing, it does the thing, it shows it when it pops up, all right? This is a really good interface, all right? It's a great way you can customize it, you can brand it, you can make it look like your organization's thing. It looks like the organization's talking to the person that has this device. Fantastic. DP Notify still runs, somehow. I don't know when the certificate expires, but it's there. Don't worry about it. But I mean, what's the experience if we're not running DP Notify and the user clicks the thing and they see the little circle sitting there spinning around forever and ever without any indication of what's going on. So we want to see them, we want to tell them what they're, we're reticulating their splines or whatever we happen to be telling them. So again, big tick. If we want to do something after this whole setup process and the user's doing something and we want to interact with them, we've got some options that we can use, right? We can use AppleScript, and if you're like a Jamf client, you've got Jamf Helper. These are okay, these are really good. They let you, interact with the person and get some information, all that sort of stuff, but there's a couple of limitations with it, right? So there's an asterisk there. The one tool does one thing and the other tool does something slightly different, and maybe you want to do both of those. So what are your workflows doing? Are you calling both things? Is that sort of convenient? Do you forget which you've got to use for this? There's another tool called Dialog. It's been around for quite a while. I think it was built macOS 10.1 or 10.2 or something like that. Unfortunately, it's no longer maintained. So it is what it is. But again, it solves that problem of like having this one thing that lets me do multiple ways of interacting with the user without having to go to a separate tool to do the thing because it does it and the other one doesn't. All right, so it's really good. But again, even more asterisks because it's a tool, it's no longer maintained. Source code might be out there. I don't think anyone's compiled it recently. So, what do we do there? Maybe we want to throw something in front of the person, in front of the user and really get their attention. Big honking text, who's used that? Who used it with the honk? Wusses. This still runs, obviously. This one was actually, I downloaded it from Two Canoes, so they got a fork of that. I think the last update on that was 2017, but download it, compiled it, ran really well. So if you want to get something out in front of people, you can do that. Don't feed the dragons. unless they like bananas. You can feed them a banana. There's my banana reference. So yes, big tick, because it does, it's a communication with the user. It's communicating in a way which is, you want to really get their attention and do stuff. But asterisks is again, right? What are we going to do about that? So these are the tools that I'm using, mostly, to do all these kind of automation tasks, communicate with my users, make sure that my automations are working because that's getting the right information. But it's a bit of a, I've got like half a dozen things going on here, right? So macOS 11 Big Sur comes out. And the neat thing about this is we've got a new language called swiftUI, which is starting to mature, right? And so I start thinking, is there something I can do? Like this is, my background is actually programming. So that's what I did back in the 90s. And if you're in the mid-90s and you're thinking about what's a really good language to learn to build enterprise applications, there's a number of options. So what do you think I learned? Java? No. Java was brand new when I was doing that. C, exactly. C is the first letter in the word COBOL. How much COBOL is in macOS? Not a lot. So I've got to learn a new language, right? So I'm looking around for languages. I've been playing around with Swift back and forth. I've written an app or two in Objective-C. That was fun. But yeah, I'm sort of looking for something that lets me build the tool that I want to build, right? That does the things that I want to do, and I don't have to deploy once, and it does the things. I've done this before. In Xworld 2017, I did a little quick talk. So one of the things I used to like playing with is, playing around with Xcode and stuff like that. So this was on the topic of building an expressive user interface. So what I was looking for was something which said, I'm doing a thing, it's going to take some time, and I'm going to show you how much time it's going to take. So I want to communicate to the user, don't click the thing and go away. Don't turn the computer off. Like, we're doing something here. So I'm thinking about that. And I got that working. So this is like a little 5-minute demo, so it doesn't do a lot. It's just a button and it shows a progress bar. But internally, this is what I'm building stuff with. And, it's kind of limited because, for this, I'm using Interface Builder in Xcode. And Interface Builder is great. You can drag and drop the things you want to put on there and all that sort of stuff. But as soon as you start getting into, well, what if I want this to look differently, or what if I want to have a different function? You start sort of getting into like more complexity. So the other thing was, this was written using AppleScript Objective-C Bridge. So I'm not using, a compiled language here. This is a scripting language tied into Xcode, so I can talk to a interface builder file. So it has a few more asterisks with it, right? Because it's kind of annoying to get AppleScript to do really deep level programming stuff. So as I said before, there's this really great language that's come out. It was released with macOS 10.15. It was okay. Big Sur comes out. It's looking a lot better. And there's this really good tool that came out, written by Eric Gomez, called Nudge, which a lot of people might have used. And I thought, this is great, right? Because one of my problems that I have with is starting something is really, I kind of get lost, like, where am I? I do a lot better if I can start from a starting point that someone else has already given me. In fact, for this talk, I was having problems starting with it, and I used an LLM to say, generate a talk on this topic. And that really got me motivated because it was entirely wrong, and I had to correct it. And in the process, I generated a slide deck. So I take Nudge, and I modify it a bit, and I make it look a little bit like what I wanted to do. And I start playing around with it more. And as I'm playing around with it, I'm sort of learning how swiftUI works. I do this, I do that, and I start to see areas where Nudge is maybe like, oh, this is missing, or maybe we can do that. So in this whole process, and I'm feeding this code back into Nudge, right? So I'm taking, Eric's code, which was awesome, using it as a starting point, working something out, building it back in. So when I'm starting a project like this, I'm sort of thinking, okay, I need to have some goals. What's my end goal here? And how can I make this thing better than the thing that came before it, right? And my goal, my bar here, right, is those half a dozen apps that I was deploying out before. So I want to be better than that for me, because this is my interface with management, managing the device. So I'm trying to make my life easier. At the same time, I'm trying to improve the interface between the user, myself and the users, right, so that they can get what they need to get. And so I've got a basic list of things that I want to do. So, you know, like we need to be able to change the title to what we want. We need to have nice expressive content. I'd like to have buttons that have as long as text as you want. Go nuts, why not? Why should I tell you how long your buttons should be? We want to have like images, you know, we want to change the icon, we want to have stuff. We might be able to do it full screen so we can really get their attention. And we want it to be able to, I want it to be able to easy to use, right? So I want to be able to do it, to basically just go, I want to build something and start building it quick and getting it done. And there's many more. I think at the current moment there's something like 117 command line options that you can use to set various bits and pieces, which is insane. So I build this tool and I approach my employers. And normally this wouldn't happen, but I thought, I've been using these tools that the community has created and given. And I thought, maybe this is a good opportunity for me to sort of give back and sort of as a thank you for you know, me being able to use these other things without paying for them. So I approached my employer and they said, yeah, open source it, sounds great. So managed to open source it, release it to people, and I would have been really happy if like more than one person used it. So obviously I'm, you know, happy. So currently it's got, I think, this was taken a few days ago, it was like 6.3 million downloads on GitHub, which you can take that stat for what you want. I do have some stats about actual deployment numbers, some I can mention, some I can't. And I've got a whole bunch of contributors now, so people find it and they think, oh, I can have an improvement, I can do this. So, you know, opening it up has been really great because now I'm starting to get, I'm starting to receive, you know, ideas and content from other people. It's been really, really good. So it's used in a bunch of places now, right? So Installer has an option where you can have it pop up a little progress thing so it can show that I'm downloading something and it's taking some time. App Auto Patch runs through your system, updates your apps, tells you what's going on. Dance Nelson, Set Up Your Mac, is my go-to canary when I do a new build. It's a 5,000 line bash script. I've actually got a really old version of it, and my benchmark is if I compile something and it still runs that, then I'm good, or it should be good, because it pretty much uses everything. Trevor Sissock, baseline and renew, really great. And erase install. We've recently fully implemented erase install our environment, and I had that moment where it's like, I've used tools before, and you know that use swiftDialog, and it's like, oh, this is great. Kind of looks like my thing, and all sort of whatnot. It was really awesome to see a process that works so smoothly for a user to press a button and have them update either to the latest version of the current OS or the next OS, and it just took care of everything. And the thing that I really, really liked about it, and this was my sort of goal with building, is swiftDialog, was that human-computer interface, right? I want the user to have a good experience. What they see has to be better than what they would, you know, see if we did it any other way. And there are plenty of other ways to update macOS. You can have them pop up a notification or whatever it is. And I was just, this was like, really impressed. So the last 12 months, I've been a little bit quiet. So I've been doing a little bit of dev work with, you know, adding some extra bits and pieces and stuff like that. I have been sort of thinking up ideas, and I'm trying to think of different ways. I'm sort of noticing that people are using this swiftDialog not just to tell people something, but there's a lot of onboarding workflows sort of being used, like pop this up and block the user out while we install everything on your computer and do all these things. So I've added in a few extra bits and pieces, hopefully to sort of like, go towards that. And this is over the last like 12 months or so. So I've got a presentation mode, which is generally, I say it's a much more cut down version. So it gives you a thing on the side. You can put a message there and it just shows stuff happening with a progress bar. There's a couple of different ways you can show that with like a list or whatever it is. This is like showing a web view on that side and a list of things on that side. We can shift content around now, so you can basically say, maybe I don't want the checkboxes always underneath the thing, every single version, so they'll look the same. So you can reorder things, you can make it look, how you want it to work. We've added in this stack style view, little like, alert dialog type thing. It's a whole bunch of built-in variables now. So essentially you can just put this in so if you say, well, here's an example. You could say, you could tell the icon, computer. You can say the title is computer model, and we're running OS name, OS version. And it'll figure it out and tell you that I took this screenshot a while ago. Confirmation in your text boxes. So rather than typing in, putting up 2 boxes and then in your script trying to validate that and all that sort of stuff, I just do that here now. So this will live validate, so it won't accept you won't be able to dismiss the dialog without both those fields matching. And that works with regex and everything as well. So. And login window support. So now it runs on top of the login window. Again, I was sort of like leaning into this image building workflows and stuff like that. So now when you're doing something, you can, at the login window, before the user even gets onto the system, you can pop something up. So that was nice. Native QR support, so just with images, like we used to do SF equals and bring up a SF symbol. You can now do QR equals and then a bunch of text, and it'll pop that up. No one has clicked the QR code. You know what it is. It's a guy dancing. And now we can have, I made a view, so if you're using a centered view, you can just pass it as many sort of icon resources as you want, and it'll display them all along the row, along the top. Actions on notifications. So this is this was one of the additions that came in from a contributor. So essentially, it is you can send a notification with an ID. And then normally, if you wanted to re-notify someone, you just send another notification, you end up with this big pile. So now you can address that notification directly with that ID. And you can tell it to, we can change the value of it, or we can dismiss it entirely and make it go away. So we can sort of re-notify people without having to populate the notification section. So that's kind of like been the last 12 months, and we're sort of still at the process of like, what are we doing next? Well, where do I want to go with this? Already it's doing a whole bunch of stuff, which I'm really happy with, but I think there's improvements that I can make both in how it's written and sort of what it does. So I'm currently working on version 3. There's a few preview builds already, which I've put up on GitHub. Including one I published just before we came up on stage. I published a preview release which now has some extra stuff in it, which my friend Henry will talk about very, very soon. So we've got stuff, it's liquid glass. I had an attempt at it, and I was trying, how can I experiment with this? I compiled it on macOS 26. So it looks like macOS 26, but there we go. But in macOS 26, we've got some extra things. So what stuff I wanted to put in. So precise screen position. You can give it a direct XY coordinate and put it exactly on the screen. And that works across, it runs on the primary display. There was some documentation about that. Those list items that were popping up, they're now clickable, so you can associate that with the URL, and you can click it and it'll go off and do the URL thing. Playing around at the moment with collapsible paragraphs. So Markdown doesn't have this kind of capability built in, or the Markdown spec that I'm using for swiftDialog anyway. So I've kind of written this in, we'll see how it goes, but essentially you can now have like a paragraph of text and you can have it collapse by default, and then you click the little chevron and it pops down and shows the text. So that's the thing we've got in there. Inspect mode, which is the thing that Henry will be talking about, come up because we'll be talking about this in 2 seconds. And of course, it's now built and compiled for, dialog command line changes. So at the old user local bin dialog was a bash script that just called the binary. It is now a compiled binary, compiled in Swift, and the plans are going to be, I'm going to be moving a whole lot of processing into that for the command line stuff, and then we'll be calling the app using, proper, application calling processes and not just running the binary directly. And of course, it runs on macOS 26. So now, we have some new stuff, some new awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of contributors, Henry is going to make this whole presentation look good.
No, not at all. So, okay. So a very common use case that we all know is the progress indicator, and it's used a lot in this software installation phase. And what Armin showed on Tuesday was amazing. So if you can use that, go for it. But there may be limitations. So otherwise, swiftDialog is a very great substitute. And we acknowledge that this is a great goal here to make this process a bit easier, to have this detection mechanism. That's where the inspect mode is about. Because many, including me, struggle to write great scripts initially, and then lately I had to do this in Bash, and it got complicated. Because writing the complex script logic is daunting when your challenge is to detect things and then later on hand this over to some other people who have the ownership and the maintenance of such a script. And it would be great if we have an easier way to just do the detection and monitoring of something is downloaded and when it's installed. So this gave me an idea. I pulled out a hammer. No, I've test built a binary to detect apps getting installed in expected paths, and then I created a brittle script to launch dialog, and surprisingly it worked quite well, but something is wrong here, because it doesn't get much easier if you suddenly have to juggle with 2 binaries, right? So that's just wrong. So the beauty of open source is that you can learn how it's built and you can contribute, and this is how I started to work on something. I'd like to introduce the new inspect mode in dialog, which allows for the automatic lookups of specific elements in the file system. And this is not a big invention, others have done it, but swiftDialog now gets some great new capabilities. The basic idea here is that the integrated detection and the UI works better together. So we have FS events monitoring that looks at predefined paths, and then the user experience is a bit predefined, so we have kind of presets. And to make this work, the JSON that you already have pre-built, this is best used with the environment variable. This is the JSON. And the idea, as said, is to connect the predefined apps and the detection with the UI progress. As said, we see, oh, you don't see the JSON, I just see one slide. Now we're in sync. The idea here is to really make it easier. And you're all experts in JSON, thanks to Ulrich's talk. We have a cache path here where it really looks at predefined paths. That could be Jamf, that could be Monkey, or Workspace ONE, or whatever you want. And then we have the items where you define some basics. And the best thing is, I think, to show it. And we have a long script here, and it's better to just see it working. Here we see automatically that it detects some apps are installed, and then some packages are downloaded, if that works, oh, something is, the cache detection is maybe not working. However, you see there's a live update. And, but we can switch the preset very quickly to another look. And thanks for the inspiration, Armin and Mika. You can even see here that there's install details once it's detected. That something installs here. And somehow the observation of the cache is not working. Maybe permissions thing. But you see it's automatically quickly updating. And we have a third mode. I mean, these are just the juggling the presets. And just to show off that there's different ways, including gradients, to make the UI look better, or more interesting, or more appealing for your audience. And yeah, so it's not much magic, but currently, yeah, there's this auto mechanism that formerly was much harder to script. Going back to the slides now. And bring that in sync, no? Ooh, that's just like, so therefore, oh man. So, demo, we've done that. Okay, here we are. So the JSON loading is, as said, this best is to be handled if you use a export of a variable that hands over the path to the config. Then the FS events monitoring, that's the new thing in inspect mode, and this triggers the GUI updates. And there's additional things that I have not highlighted, but you have side messages, they rotate, so you can really, yeah, make something with that. There's banner image support and many other things that are built into swiftDialog. But what else can we do? There's some notable projects, for example, the Mac Security Compliance project and other tools, and they have something in common. For example, if you use the Jamf Compliance editor and they have an audit function, they create a plist in the file system. Well, it's a plist with a simple structure, so complex plist structures can be a pain, but this is very simple structures. And yeah, so we have a mode, again, different user interface, where we have gradients and shiny icons, and most of that is already built into swiftDialog, so it's more like the reassembling of the things. And what happens here is you hand over a path to the plist that you want to inspect, and then you have the expected value, and it checks the plist for the current value. And then you can write the, it's a very Boolean kind of thing, like pass or fail. But yeah, that gives some nice use cases. And then what else? I mean, you can combine these things and maybe use something like OS Query or OS Query and other tools and do the same. So just an example, you use some OS Query queries, it's very powerful. You have a script that runs those queries locally, and there's a pass-fail check, and this was written into a plist. And then same thing again, different UI or different look and feel, but the idea is the same. So these are some of the extra capabilities that come with the inspect mode. So quick recap. And the inspection with OS Query, it's the same. We have this active path observation right now that is based on FS events. Currently, we have 4 different presets, and of course, we have to discuss internally what is a good structure, because it should not explode like 100 presets. Nobody can handle that. And what are the real use cases? So we're presenting this here in preview mode to collect feedback and then just like come to a good consensus. Of course, the new JSON structure has a learning curve with the options, but we can present some good starting points. And the good thing is, if you think like, that doesn't appeal to me, it's optional. So you can just like ignore it if you don't like it. And I hand it back to Bart.
Thank you. I've had. As a feature, when Henry started showing me this, I was like, yes, like I want to get this in, absolutely. Like, let's start working on it. So yeah, I'm absolutely super happy that yeah, you chose to PR this into the project and contribute, and we get to release it and show it to everyone else. It's awesome. I love it. So where can we get it from? So I've got a website, swiftdialog.app. There is also that build, which includes the inspect mode, which has been published onto GitHub. So that should be available now. That's using a URL shortening service that we have at work. So if you see the CSR at the bottom, that's what that is. It's either that or a big ass, you know, QR code. Tack så mycket.